Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for choosing to watch this. If you're interested in Wagtail, maybe you're new to Wagtail, maybe you know what Wagtail is and you've used it lots. Either way, it's going to be hopefully a really interesting talk. I'm going to talk a bit about where we've come from, the history of Wagtail, and where we're going to, including things like vision and some product development stuff, as well as a little bit about how we generate revenue and things like that for our open source CMS. So I'm going to start by sharing my slides. So I am Phil Dexter at PhillyDex on Twitter, and I work for Torchbox as a product manager for Wagtail, which means that I look after all of our investment into Wagtail. I'll talk about Torchbox and Wagtail's relationship soon in my presentation. And as I said, today we're just going to talk a bit about where we've come from and where we're going. So I'll start the talk by covering off, well, what is Wagtail? Well, Wagtail is the most popular CMS, which is built on Django. I've noticed that the PyCon Maintainers Summit website is built on Wagtail, as attributed at the bottom. Lots of sites which are built using Django. Lots of websites are built using Wagtail. And to kind of break this down, CMS stands for Content Management System, for those of you who haven't heard of that before. And that basically allows people to update their websites when they're not technical. So if you're going to be doing that and you're going to be using Python, often you're going to be using Wagtail for that. Now, what does popular mean? Well, it's hard to define, really. I say this quite a bit. We were talking about GitHub stars. We have around 11,000, 12,000, I think, at the moment. Are we talking about the sorts of sites that are built using Wagtail and who uses it? And I was trying to define this, and I thought it might be worth talking a bit about the sorts of people and sorts of sites that are using Wagtail. So who uses Wagtail? Well, we have Google here. So this blog.google and creators.google. They use Wagtail for their large kind of marketing sites. They use Wagtail for, and big supporters of Wagtail as well. NASA JPL, their kind of main sites, and all of their sites are launched on Wagtail. They launched a couple of years ago, and they have a big headless setup for Wagtail. They're using it headlessly. The NHS in the UK use Wagtail. They have huge amounts of traffic which pump through there, and really good SEO, and kind of a huge government website. Caltech, so the California Technology Institute, use it in a kind of multi-site instance. They have hundreds of sites within one Wagtail instance, all kind of housed together, which is really interesting and cool setup. The Motley Fool use it. They have tens of thousands of pages in Wagtail, so like really large amounts of content being managed there. Twilio use Wagtail. So again, they use Wagtail in a really kind of interesting way for their docs, their kind of intranet sites, so the famous kind of Twilio developer docs. And Mozilla also use Wagtail. So Mozilla Foundation use Wagtail. So they use Wagtail Localize, which is the localization package for Wagtail, and they actually have hundreds of locales that they're translating into all the different languages and different kind of localized content for their donation site. So there's a few of the kind of big names and larger users of Wagtail. There's also many people around the world who use Wagtail just for their own kind of private or personal blog site. It's a very quick and easy thing to set up, so it really does scale relatively well. But yeah, I think we generally feel like we are probably the most popular Django-based CMS. But we came from quite humble beginnings. So this selfie, right, dates us. So this was the same year that Wagtail started. And the year was 2014, and it was these people who set up Wagtail. So this is Torchbox, and these are some people who were in the Torchbox tech team at the time, and they created Wagtail for a client, actually. So Torchbox are an agency. They created Wagtail for a client decided they want their own CMS, which is not always sensible, but in this case worked out, I think. And Torchbox and the client decided to open source the CMS, and kind of the rest is history to an extent. These graphs are a little small. You don't need to be able to read it perfectly, but you can see generally this top one is the GitHub commits. And for those of you that can't see the detail of that, basically shows a steady stream of commits throughout the history from 2014 up until this point. So we haven't ever had kind of a dormant period. We've always been kind of working on Wagtail. Wagtail's always been having code added to it. And then the bottom graph there, which grows steadily over time, is our Slack active users per week. So again, that's kind of the main community hub is Slack, and we see that grow and continue to grow through time. So Wagtail came from some kind of smaller beginnings and only had a few people contributing to it, and now there's a much larger community with about 3,000 people on our Slack. And it's maintained by the core team, as lots of open source projects are. We actually have kind of these kinds of people. There's nine people's faces here, and then there are 15 others, and they're from Torchbox, but also from lots of other organizations and lots of different countries around the world as well. Lots from the States, some from Australia, New Zealand, and yeah, further afield. So kind of a pretty classic kind of setup where we were started by a single company, but there's lots of companies kind of being involved in Wagtail at this point. So, why would someone want to use Wagtail? Well, if you're, one of the things that we get from Python and from Django is we get lots of benefits, right? So if we think about what's Python, so Python is generally used because it makes it faster to build better software applications, right? That's why you'd use Python rather than another programming language or any kind of lower level language. Python kind of gets rid of some of the lower level things you need to do with bits and bytes and noughts and ones, and says, okay, this is fine. There's lots of stuff here that you can use. You can just use words and build up your software applications. Django then makes it faster to build better web applications. So if you think about, what's Django to Python? Django is the kind of web specific element of Python. It makes it faster to build better Python web applications using Python. It's possible to build them without Django, without any kind of web framework, but it's not necessarily advisable. You'd be kind of writing lots of code, which is already written in best practice ways. And then Wagtail on top of that is kind of, okay, if you want to use Django for your web application, but you're building a content managed website, you could just use Django and build your own kind of CMS on top of it, or use Django as a CMS, but it's not going to be as good an experience as using something which is kind of specifically built for it. So Wagtail makes it faster and better to build content managed websites. If you start with Wagtail, then you're going to be doing well and skipping lots of the boring and basic parts and inheriting lots of value. So kind of expanding on that a bit more, what are those benefits that Python gives us? Well, it's these kinds of things, right? So Python is very easy to learn and to use. There's a very mature community around Python. As we know, these kinds of summits and talks that happen, lots of people contributing to Python and using Python around the world. It's very versatile and efficient. So we get some of those benefits. It's very reliable. It's very fast. It's very flexible. You can do lots of things with it. There's also very predictable releases, and there's kind of these guiding principles of Python. We've kind of, as Wagtail, we've taken on board some of this stuff. We really like the predictability of the releases of Python and of Django, and we have predictable releases for Wagtail too. So we used to kind of release at ad hoc points, but for the last 3-4 years, the last 3 years, we've been doing kind of quarterly releases. We've never missed a quarter since we started that. And the next quarterly release is going to be May this year, and then August and November and through. So that's one of the things that we like. And then there's the guiding principles, so the Zen of Python, and we actually have a Zen of Wagtail, which is kind of inspired by the Zen of Python, which sort of says this is the way in which we think content management systems should be built. So those are kind of the benefits of Python, and Django basically inherits all those benefits of what Python has and then adds on its own for the web. So it adds scalability for the web. It adds security, a kind of web-specific security, and gives you lots of libraries for classic kind of things you need to do when you're building for the web and kind of internet type things. And then they have also the Django way of doing things, which we like. And again, for Wagtail, there's certain things, or we'd say that there's the Wagtail way to do things too. And the final thing for Django is a quote that I quite like, which I found somewhere online. Apologies, but it basically says, developers have done all the boring part of web development themselves, so you get to do the fun part. And I think that's really cool. It's a really nice summary of kind of what Django is and what Wagtail is. Wagtail extends Django. It kind of builds on top of Django, and we like to think that we've done lots of the boring parts of content management systems as well. We've got lots of the functionality and the features that you need. So you get to kind of start off with the customizing bit of making it specific to your instance rather than the basic parts. So Wagtail kind of stands on the shoulders of those giants of Python and Django being giants, and we kind of inherit those benefits, right? It's written in Python, it inherits some of Django's excellent libraries and ways of doing things, not only kind of technically, but we also were inspired by lots of the, the thought processes behind the way in which they develop the products. And Wagtail adds its own. So you get powerful features and really good UX for editors, things like publishing workflows, things like being able to have Google Docs style commenting in your editor interface, being able to kind of go in and start writing your documents, your web pages, sorry, in your content management system, and being able to kind of manage and have a single source of truth. There's lots of installable packages for Wagtail as well. So third-party packages, for instance, the Wagtail localize, A/B testing, things like this. And it's very extensible as well. So Wagtail is just Django, is just Python. You can extend it whichever way you want and how you like to. You can customize it. Of course, the more you customize it, the harder it might be to upgrade in the future, which is why we have the kind of the Wagtail way of doing things and the kind of guiding principles. Lots of documentation around kind of extending, but generally it's very extensible and can do lots of things for you. The final thing with Wagtail is the opinionation. So we're opinionated on how content management should work. We have kind of particular, we think that certain CMSs will allow power to be more with the editors, or more with developers, or more with content designers perhaps, and we're kind of specific with that. I'm going to talk a bit about that a little bit here. So we have this thing called the separation of content and design, which is not a new idea, but when we kind of came up with Wagtail in 2014, it was relatively new. So we believe that designers should control the visual design, right? So when the person who designs and comes up in Sketch or Figma or whatever it is, comes up with, this is the kind of thing that the web page should look like, this is how the text should flow, and this is how it should, kind of spacing should be. Designers are the best place to do that, right? Not developers, not kind of editors and authors and content creators. It's designers who should do that. And then developers should control the content model. So there's certain CMSs where they allow you to, as an editor, even kind of update bits of content, or say, oh, I want a new field on this page type, or I'd like a new content type here. And that's not always the best, right? Because generally that will be optimizing for one specific part of the system, optimizing for one specific problem or one thing that you're trying to solve for, rather than thinking about the whole and thinking about, okay, how do we make this fit in within this kind of database model, right? How do we make it fit in within this content model? Developers are the best place to do that, to kind of step back and go, okay, here's the reasons why this has been put together in this way. Here's how we should solve this problem. So we think that very much as developers, you should do that, which means the editors, right, the final kind of person or stakeholder within this, basically get to write the content, and you get to kind of come up with the pages and all sorts of new pages in the content management system. But they do that within the limitations that the designers have set for the visual design. This is what it should look like. And the developers set in terms of the content model, and this is what the content model should look like. So yes, the editors still have some level of power. They can kind of write, but they choose what the content is, but only within restrictions that have been set for them. So here's an example of a Python web conference kind of web page, actually. So you can see here, there's a few it's kind of classic landing page for a website. So we'll just think about how you build that in Wagtail. So first of all, they've got a title there, the most in-depth Python conference for web developers. And that's kind of just standard text. There's no bold, there's no italics. It's kind of very much designed to kind of stand out as a main header there. And for that, we would probably just have a plain text field. We wouldn't allow the content editors to stick an image in the middle of it, right? We wouldn't allow them to make it pink and flashing. We wouldn't allow them to have italics or links or anything else in there. It's just going to be a plain text field. And that's something that the designers and developers would agree, okay, that's what we want it to be, and that's how we'll restrict them. And as an editor, you just get to kind of write some words in. We might even put a text limit on so that it kind of stays roughly on one line on most monitors. And then there's a subtitle just beneath it, much smaller, which says the 4th annual 2022 Python web conference hosted virtually. With a few more details. And there's a link at the end of that. And again, there's kind of, it's a certain color. It's like slightly lighter gray. This is very much design territory. And so your designer and developers might agree, okay, maybe this is a rich text block, but actually, rather than it being something where you can bold text and have it italic and have it kind of right aligned and all this kind of stuff, let's just have it so it's rich text, but you're only allowed to put links in. We only want links to be able to go in here and nothing else. And that means that every time someone kind of adds a new homepage, they'd only be able to do that, and editors would only be able to add that in. And at the bottom, there's kind of some classic H2s and paragraph text. And again, there you can kind of set as your designers and developers, well, look, this is the design that we want. So how are we going to restrict editors within that? Or what's flexibility and freedom are we going to give to editors to be able to, to be able to express themselves here? We want to maintain consistency of design and this overall design system that we've got on this website. We also want to allow editors the space to be able to customize this page as to meet their requirements. There's this trade-off between keeping a flexible, giving flexibility to editors and having design that's consistent. And this is quite a structured page we're looking at here. But if we think about a standard blog page, you might have it's not always as structured as this. You might have some text, some images, some quotes, some kind of tables, other bits and pieces coming in, all in different orders, and you don't always want it to be the same order. That would feel, if your blog always followed the same intro, then paragraph, then this, then that, it would feel a bit kind of stale. So Wagtail has a thing called Streamfield, which again is not revolutionary now, but at the time in 2015, when this was kind of introduced to Wagtail, we were really one of the first people doing this. And Streamfield is this kind of idea of a dynamic content area. WordPress has Gutenberg now, which they released a few years ago, which is really similar to this, and lots of the kind of big new cloud-based CMSs have similar situations where you have structured data, but you allow your editors to you give them a menu of choices and they can choose as many of those things as they want in whichever order they want, rather than just having one huge rich text block. So it gives you this structured data. And let me show you what I mean. So this is a page with a title and an introduction, which let's imagine would be kind of structured data, right? Similarly to our last example, you're just writing in words here. It's just kind of a text box, and on the front end, they'll be output in the right way. And then there's kind of this little plus button within the Streamfield area. So you click that and you get a choice, either rich text, image, or table. So I can choose, for instance, to stick a rich text block in there and write my wording in there. And that's maybe like, my first paragraph of my blog. And then maybe I decide I want an image. I stick an image in, and then again, I press another plus button, stick another rich text block in. And then maybe I want to stick a table in. So I do that. And you can see that you can kind of build up these pages really easily. And it allows you to kind of have this flexibility. Maybe I want to switch, the rich text of the table, or the table and the image, or whatever, and you can do that. And you can maintain that design system that you need whilst, and have your designers happy, whilst also having your content editors happy too, that they get the freedom of expression. So now I'm going to talk a bit about, the product development evolution. So where we've gone with Wagtail and where we are now, and how that's evolved over time, because it has changed fairly significantly. Open source projects aren't always as successful as Wagtail. We're not the most successful at all by any means, but we feel like we're doing relatively well, and it's an interesting story, I think, for other maintainers. So from kind of 2014 to 2018, we basically started Wagtail, and the people contributing to Wagtail were volunteers. There was kind of a few organizations possibly who were putting some time to it. Torchbox put some time and some money towards it, but not a huge amount. There was kind of just sort of the core team really who were doing lots of work on it, with a few other volunteers outside of that, without any huge kind of corporate involvement or sponsorship. And then that changed in 2019. We had some organizations come to us who came sort of with what I call inbound sponsorship. So this is organizations who are using Wagtail, the Motley Fool being one of them, who said, actually, look, we'd like to sponsor some specific features that we need in Wagtail, right? We don't want to kind of go and build our own CMS. We like Wagtail. We want it to kind of be expanded here. But for that to happen, we need to have more functionality in here. And we know that an open source system needs funding. So look, here's some money, please can you go off and build these things? So we did that. We worked with them very closely, and we built things like commenting, things like custom workflows for publishing, so that everyone kind of benefited from this. And what the Motley Fool got out of it was that they knew that this would be maintained into the future by our core team, right? So they're not kind of doing this themselves and having to spin it up themselves, and then every upgrade kind of worrying about what the next upgrade will be and will their custom code work. They wanted that code going into core so that they could benefit, everyone could benefit, and overall it worked really well. So that was kind of where we were until sort of 2020. And in 2021, so last year, we sort of decided to take a slightly different approach. And we realized that people that were coming to us, these organizations that were coming to us to sponsor features, were coming to us not with kind of huge changes, right? They would come with a specific feature request rather than actually overall this page editor could do with kind of a rethink, right? And that's kind of one of the big projects that we did feel like we needed, was to look at the page editor that hadn't been changed hugely from 2014, 2015 times, a few small changes, but we needed to really take a step back. And what we decided to do was to do the design of that at our own cost, at Torchbox's cost, and then look for corporate sponsorship for the build. And that's kind of where we are now. So, you know, alongside, we've got the kind of contributors from core, we have some feature requests coming in from companies, but we also have gone out and done the design, and now we're looking for, and we've received sponsorship. So Google have given us a large amount of sponsorship. They sponsored us 150 grand at the end of last year, which has allowed us to kick off our build. And we're looking for more sponsorship now. So this is an interesting journey that we're going on, seeing how this works and whether it's going to work. I think for these kind of large scale changes, it's really important that we do get that sponsorship from the community, and especially from the corporate large organizations who can afford it and who have these budgets, who, rather than kind of rolling their own and spinning their own kind of systems and spending millions of pounds on customizing their own version of Wagtail, they contribute to overall, you know, Wagtail as a whole, and that's better for everyone. Everyone wins from that and kind of gets the benefits, but also as an organization, they get to benefit too, because they know that it's going to be maintained going forward rather than worrying about the next upgrades. So that's kind of where our product development has gone, and this is kind of the updated page editor design that we're really pleased and excited about and working on building right now. The other thing that we set out a couple of years ago was a product vision. So we have a product vision of where Wagtail should be in 2023, and there's a picture of Alice in Wonderland here on the screen, and it's a classic product management quote from Alice in Wonderland, where she asked the Cheshire Cat which way she should go, and the Cheshire Cat says, well, that very much depends on where you're trying to get to. And Alice replies, well, I don't mind where I get to. And the Cheshire Cat says, well, in that case, it doesn't matter which way you want to go. And we felt like that a bit with Wagtail to an extent, or with any product, I think, to an extent. If you don't have this kind of vision of where you're trying to get to, it can be hard to know if the next step you're making, the changes you're making, are the right ones. So we set out this product vision. Torchbox set a product vision for Wagtail, how we see Wagtail in 2023, and we did it in this kind of comic book style. There's lots of different ways you can have product visions. There's written product visions, there's videos, there's kind of clickable demos and prototypes and things. But yeah, we felt like this comic book style works really well, and it sort of sets out certain scenarios and scenes of how we would see Wagtail being used in 2023. Right. So don't try and read all the text that's on here. You won't be able to read any of the text here. You can find this online. If you type in Wagtail product vision, you'll be able to find a blog on the wagtail.org site. But I'll just kind of cover off the main pillars that we have of our vision, so to give you a sense of the sort of thing it contains. So this first pillar, well, I think 5 pillars. The first pillar is kind of the first 30 minutes of Wagtail. So this is a sense that we feel like it's really important what these first 30 minutes of Wagtail are like for people. So this is new people who are coming to Wagtail and might have heard of it somewhere, might have been recommended it by someone, and their first experience needs to be really great. We find that for developers, especially once they've used Wagtail for 30 minutes, once they're using the tutorial, they're generally hooked, right? It's a really fun thing to write. It's a really fun and easy thing to be able to develop with, especially if you know any Django at all. But generally, even for students and people, they find it relatively easy to pick up and get going with. We want that initial experience of Wagtail to be really great. A really great demo experience, a smooth setup, and easy onboarding, and really nice documentation. And that's also for editors as well. I think Wagtail suffers a bit at the moment because it's not easy for an editor to go and try out and see what the editor experience will be like. So we're trying to work on that. The next is specifically for editors in terms of their use of Wagtail and making it more beneficial for them and easier for editors to be able to get their work done, really. And one of the big things we're doing here is the page editor update, where it's going to be more accessible, easier, less vertical space, easier, more performant, easier for kind of longer pages, lots and lots of things, lots of problems that we're solving with that. But yeah, we're also thinking about how Wagtail can help to optimize content for success and performance, keep you up to date on how your content is performing as well. Lots of kind of best practice and pushing some boundaries really for content management systems. So yeah, this is about kind of helping editors to get their best work done, and the comic strip there describes someone going through and having a really good time using Wagtail. The third pillar is called sophistication without compromising simplicity. And this is really more a design principle. So Wagtail, as I said at the start, is used for millions, I guess, of or maybe not millions, but lots of blog sites around the world. Lots of people have their own personal private Wagtail sites they set up in their own instances. Good for them, and it works really well. And what we don't want is for Wagtail not to work for them, right? For those sorts of people. Yeah, when NASA and Google and all these people are coming in and wanting more features and using Wagtail, we need to make sure that it works and scales in a really nice way for them, and that they get the power of Wagtail, but it's only unleashed at the point you need it. It's not kind of forced upon you. We don't add lots to the UI and start making it more than it needs to be. We want it still to work really well as a blog site, as well as being able to scale. So this is kind of a design principle for us. As we build new features, we want to reveal the power of them as you need it. The fourth pillar is called Wagtail as a platform. And this is about us being obsessed with making it easy to build, maintain, and customize Wagtail, because we know that speed of development is really important for our community. So we're doing lots of work here with refactoring bits of Wagtail, better documenting parts of Wagtail that haven't been as well documented in the past. I think generally Wagtail is one of the better CMSs out there for this, and for customization and our documentation is something that we feel is a strength, but there's even more that we can do. And we're even taking this a step further, which is to try and make it as easy as possible for the Wagtail core team and the people who work on the core modules of Wagtail to update and to change and to improve, right? And the better and easier it is for that, the easier it will be for everyone who builds on top of that too. So there's lots of quotes here, which are individual ones about how we're going to make it simpler and twice as fast to be able to build things as it was back in 2020. And I think we're doing some really good work here, and yeah, really pleased with this one. So this is kind of about Wagtail being a really easy platform to build on. And the finals kind of says it's called multi-channel experiences. This really is headless. As much as anything else, it's about being able to have lots, good APIs, REST and GraphQL, and being able to push your content out and manage your content really easily from one CMS and push it out to multiple different places or one place, and have the right support for that sort of stuff. And we do have really decent headless support. I think the way which we have the content and presentation layers separated is sort of the new way of doing things with Mac architecture and Jamstack and this kind of thing, where your content management system is more a content store, and we fit really nicely into that. I think that there's so we started on a good footing here, and people like NASA and NCBI using big headless Wagtail sites. The support for it's only improving, getting better. Overall, there's a little bit more we need to do there. I'd say we're good, but not great in this area, and we want to be great. So the next kind of year for us is about making us really great and getting those starter packs on Next.js and those kinds of things up and available too. So yeah, really kind of excited about that. So what have we been doing? Well, we've been, as I kind of said, working on the discoverability for the first 30 minutes of Wagtail and the initial developer experience. For the editors, we've been working on the page editor. We're also thinking about segmentation, personalization, and experimentation, and how we can do that in Wagtail, how we can integrate with lots of tools that allow you to do this in a really nice way. With the Wagtail as a platform, we were working on the speed of development and making it simple to customize. We now have a headless public roadmap for Wagtail. And our design for big and small sites, we're making sure that every bit of design change we do, we're thinking about the largest sites and the smallest sites. So, hopefully this has been relatively interesting for you all, and you found out a bit more about Wagtail, something you didn't know. If you're interested in kind of getting involved or finding out a bit more, you can go to wagtail.org. You can go out to wagtail.org/play and actually try Wagtail out using Gitpod, which is really nice. You can check out the GitHub, which is github.com/Wagtail. Join the Wagtail Slack at wagtail.org/Slack, or you can follow us on Twitter at Wagtail CMS, where we're quite active and keep updates on there quite a lot. We also have various different events as well. There's a Wagtail space in the Netherlands, which is the conference for Wagtail. We've just held one in Cleveland, Ohio as well, where we had about 300 people attend online, 30 in person. I think we're expecting similar numbers in Netherlands. So do give that a check out and a Google, and I'm sure you'll find it. But yeah, thanks very much for watching this. Hopefully you found it informative, and yeah, take care of yourselves. Thanks. Bye-bye.